Hello there, and welcome back to the Steel City Sports Podcast. Today, we're going to be doing predictions for the NFC Championship game. And the interesting thing about this year's championship round is 3 of the 4 teams from last year's championship round are all back. The Niners, the Bengals, and the Chiefs were all in the third round last year. The only team that's not back is the Rams, obviously replaced by Philadelphia. So today we're going to look at the NFC side of things, and then later on this week we're going to look at the AFC. So the thing is, for both conferences, I think we did actually get the best 2 teams of each conference, where sometimes a team gets really hot in the playoffs and goes off, and sometimes the championship round looks kind of lopsided. You look back to some of the other previous years. One that comes to mind was when the Titans played the Chiefs in the championship round. I believe that was 2020. We all knew the Chiefs were going to win that game. But whereas in this case, I think both of these games are kind of coin tosses. They're 50-50. They're really close, really good matchups in both cases. So the way we're going to do this is I've broken down the teams into 8 different sections, and we're going to go through each section and say which team has the edge in this matchup. So we're of course going to start off with quarterback. So the matchup here is obviously Jalen Hurts versus Brock Purdy. So this one, it's not really close. I know Brock Purdy has played really good. He hasn't lost a game since starting with San Francisco, but Jalen Hurts for me is the clear winner of this matchup in terms of head-to-head. Jalen Hurts was in the MVP race all the way up until he got injured. Had he not gotten injured, I think he'd have a realistic argument for being the MVP this year. But since he did get hurt, it's kind of clearly Patrick Mahomes' award this year. But Jalen Hurts was fantastic this year in terms of not only his efficiency going up exponentially this year, but also his ability to run the ball is, a big part of his game. And whereas Brock Purdy, like I said, he's been really good, but there have been some limitations. I know it's kind of hard to read through just because he's won every game he's played so far. But you go back to that Dallas game, you go back to the first half of the Seattle game, there were throws where Brock Purdy just looked like his arm strength wasn't quite ready. But you got to give the kid a lot of credit for being, the last pick in the draft and playing as well as he has. But like I said, this one's not that close. Jalen Hurts is the better quarterback. Next, we have the weapons, and by this I mean the wide receivers and tight ends. So this was a very close matchup. These 2 teams both have very good receiving cores and tight ends. But for me, the X factor was George Kittle, and that's why I ultimately went with the 49ers winning this category. Because when you're comparing the 2 top receivers, A.J. Brown and Devonta Smith, versus Deebo Samuel and Brandon Ayuk, I think that's actually very, very even. It's very close in that regard. If you want to take Deebo or Brown, or if you want to take Ayuk or Smith, I think that's extremely close. It's a coin toss. But for me, the X factor is Dallas Goedert versus George Kittle. George Kittle is clearly the better tight end, arguably the best tight end in football. So for that reason alone is why I went with the Niners winning this category. But like I said, it's very close. Next, we have the running backs. Again, the Niners take this one because Christian McCaffrey is arguably the best running back in the NFL. I think it's honestly pretty easy now to say. When he's healthy, he's the best running back in the NFL. Not only for his running ability, but also for his catching ability. He can play as basically a number 1 receiver. He's that good. He's just so versatile. And Miles Sanders had a really good year this year, but he's nowhere near the level of Christian McCaffrey. And also, the Niners also have Elijah Moore, who before they got McCaffrey, it looked like Elijah Moore was on pace to be really good this year. But he's kind of taken on that secondary role, but he's still really good as well. So I think the Niners do win this position here. Now we go to offensive line. Again, very well-balanced O-lines for both teams. Both have really good, probably top 5 O-lines in the NFL. However, I'm going to go with the Philadelphia Eagles in this one. They have 2 or 3 Pro Bowlers on this line. Jason Kelsey, Lane Johnson, and there's one other guy, I forget his name right now, but their O-line is the best in the NFL. If you're writing out the list, I would put the Philadelphia Eagles at the top. And it's also for not only for the personnel they have, but also their versatility and how they're able to block for the run and the pass, and the Niners are really good at that as well, but their right side of their line is not quite as good as the left side. Obviously, you have probably the best offensive lineman in football right now with the Niners, with Trent Williams, but the right side of the line does have some bit of concerns, especially playing against elite defensive lines, whereas I feel like the Eagles' offensive line is literally just a brick wall, and it's a reason why Philly has one of the best run games in the NFL is because that line is so solid. So I do have the Eagles with the advantage for the offensive line. D-line. Now, I was going to put the Niners here until I looked up the sack totals for both of these teams. I was actually kind of surprised by how big of a disparity there is here. The Philadelphia Eagles recorded 44 sacks. Keep that in mind. Now, I'm going to say the Niners. I want you to predict right now how many sacks. If Philly had 44, how many do you think the Niners had? 31. Would you have really thought that the Eagles would have 13 more sacks? 13 more sacks than the Niners, just given how dominant their defense is? I was really... I had the Niners down until I looked up the sack totals, and I saw how much more productive Philly's sack numbers were. And for me, the sacks, that's the job of the defensive line, is to get at the quarterback, and Philly did that at a much higher production rate than the Niners did. So I give them the edge there. So next we have the linebacker core. Obviously, they control the middle of the field, very important. I like the Eagles linebackers. I do. I think Hassan Reddick, he's really developed into a great player. He kind of struggled to find his footing with the Cardinals, but he has been phenomenal this year with the Eagles, putting career highs in every category. But ultimately, I went with the 49ers. They have the best linebacker in the NFL by the name of Fred Warner. The guy is an absolute monster. He can play in coverage with wide receivers. That's how good he is. Linebackers typically can't keep up in terms of speed, but Fred Warner can guard receivers in the end zone. He can get at the quarterback when needed. He is the leader in tackles. He is just an absolute monster. He's the heart and soul of this 49ers defense. And for me, him alone basically gets them this category. Next, we have secondary. The Niners do have one Pro Bowler in their secondary. I didn't actually check, but for the Eagles, how many Pro Bowlers they had. But I know for sure Darius Slay's a Pro Bowler. And if I had to guess, one of their safeties has to be a Pro Bowler. I ultimately went with the Eagles. I've been saying all year, if you've been watching my channel throughout this year, if you've watched the power rankings, one of the main things I brought up for the Eagles always was I said they had the best secondary in the NFL, and I think that still holds true. They have two great number one corners with Darius Slay and James Bradbury, and then a great safety tandem. They kind of stole Gardner Johnson from the Saints for basically nothing. They have a great cohesive unit back there. They rank as one of the top defenses because of that secondary taking off the top for opposing offenses. And then the last category we have here is coach. And as good as Nick Sirianni's done, he's completely surprised me. Whenever the Eagles fired Doug Peterson, I thought that was one of the biggest mistakes they could have made. But Nick Sirianni has been a perfect fit for the Eagles, getting them into the playoffs his first year and leading them to the 1 seed this year. He's been great. But Kyle Shanahan, I think, is the best coach in the NFL. And I will say that because, there's obviously a ton of really good coaches in the NFL, whether you go Andy Reid, you go McVay, all that stuff, all the different great coaches out there. But Kyle Shanahan's ability to basically, it doesn't matter who the quarterback is in Kyle Shanahan's systems. They just win. That is mind-blowing to me. I don't think there's many coaches out there that could take Brock Purdy and make him look like Kurt Warner, really. He and also his schemes, the way he uses his players. Look at Debo, his ability to be a number one running back and a number one receiver. You don't see many teams use their receiver in the run game like that. It's just very clever. I love the offensive scheme, all the play action they do. Obviously, the players they have allow them to do that because they have so many gifted players. But he's just an offensive mastermind, and I think right now he is the best head coach in the NFL. So definitely the Niners get the advantage there. So like I said, there are 8 categories. Let's tally it up now. I had Philly win 1, 2, 3, 4 of these, and the Niners won 4 as well. So again, When I said earlier, this is a coin toss, this is a very close matchup, look at it. It's come down to 4-4. So it shows how close this game's going to be. Philly is home. They are favorited by 2.5 in this game. I think it's going to be an absolute slaughter fest in terms of defense. I think this is going to be a defensive game, low scoring. They both have hellacious defenses, but ultimately I'm going to roll with the home team, the team that has the better quarterback. I'm predicting the Philadelphia Eagles to win this game, and I think they're going to cover the spread of -2.5. I think they win by more than that. So that's been my breakdown of the NFC Championship game. I have Philly advancing to the Super Bowl. Please let me know down below if you have anything to add. I would really look forward to responding to that. And stay tuned for our AFC video. We're definitely going to do the same format here where we break down each kind of position. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.